The extraterrestrial beings may have had from 6 to 8 billion years more to delve into these profound questions that we view as philosophical questions. They may well have definitive answers to these questions about the teleological dynamic that our universe is engaged in, to really know whether or not our universe is going to ultimately dissipate into nothingness, or whether it in fact oscillates back and forth between the state of absolute mass and absolute energy. We can delude ourselves as a species, as we appear to be doing, into believing that there's no way to ultimately determine what truth is.
My name is Danny Sheehan. I'm a constitutional litigator who's worked some of the most important cases in modern American history. From Pentagon Papers, the Watergate scandal, to Iran-Contra. My legal career has led me now to this pivotal moment. As our human family confronts the implications of the existence here on our planet of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional non-human species. I will be your guide as we dive into the profound philosophical, theological, and public policy questions pertaining to the UFO phenomenon, alien life, and the citizen movement for disclosure. This is the Full Disclosure Podcast, coming to you from the New Paradigm Institute on SpectraVision Radio.
This is, in the United States, has been the week of the Super Bowl. Literally tens of millions of people watching the live Super Bowl. It has kind of consumed a lot of the national news coverage. But during the week since we were together last, the U.S. federal government is now come out of its temporary shutdown, but the major debate is going on as we gather here today in the United States Congress, pursuant to which the major Democratic Party leaders in the House and Senate are approving of the 2026 budget for the Department of Homeland Security, arguing that the ICE agents and the Border Patrol people that have been deployed into the American cities, virtually exclusively democratically controlled cities by Republican President Donald Trump, have been running wild and beating people up and shooting people, actually, and killing people, breaking down doors without any warrants and dragging people from their cars, and arresting people, doing racial profiling, that just identifying people that they think look like they're Hispanic, and arresting them and sorting through them and actually imprisoning many Americans that are not immigrants at all. 5 million people in the United States have marched in the streets at some 2,700 different cities and towns across the United States, protesting the conduct of these ICE agents and Border Patrol people. And the Democrats, now joined with a number of Republican senators and House members, have joined in refusing to consent to the multi-billion-dollar budget that is being asked for by the Republican Party leadership in the Congress to fund the Department of Homeland Security for the full year. This debate is going on now. The Democratic Party has agreed to a temporary funding of the Department of Homeland Services up to Friday the 13th, February 13th. Okay, and so the debate is going on as we speak right now on the floor of both houses, trying to impose upon the Trump administration certain restrictions on the activities of the ICE agents and the Border Patrol people in these Democratic cities. They're demanding that the ICE agents and Border Patrol people be prohibited from wearing masks, that they have to have name identification on their uniforms, that they have to stop raids without warrants and breaking down doors of people with no judicial warrants. They need to stop physically assaulting the people who are demonstrating against them. They need to stop killing American demonstrators. Now, these are a series of what you might consider to be minimal demands on the part of the Democratic Party. They're in the process of preparing to give full funding demanded by the administration to the massive roundup of citizens. There's over 70,000 people that are now been incarcerated by the ICE agents, et cetera. And their administration is firing the immigration officers that are supposed to be reviewing into the applications for political asylum here. This is basic mayhem with, as I say, over 5 million Americans demonstrating in the streets against them. At the same time, there are reports of massive demonstrations going on in the state of Iran, in the government of Iran, against the Ayatollah Khomeini's administration. And President Trump is threatening, on the heels of his having done an initial bombing of the nuclear facilities of Iran, he is threatening to attack Iran if, in fact, they kill or injure any of their demonstrators. And yet the reports are now flying in that a minimum of 3,000 people have been killed by the Iranian military forces, the demonstrators. Most estimates range as high as 6,800 people have been killed. The medical teams that are operating in Iran are asserting that over 16,000 people have been confirmed killed by the military forces of Iran because they were demonstrating against the Iranian government. There are presently 11,200 additional deaths that are being officially investigated now as a result of this. And President Trump has deployed U.S. military forces, aircraft carriers, the USS Abraham Lincoln, and others into the waters around Iran right now to make real his threat to topple the government and to specifically bomb all the remaining nuclear weapons facilities, development facilities that the government of Iran has, in this peculiar response to them potentially injuring any of their demonstrators, now in the face of full evidence of them killing tens of thousands of the demonstrators. And what's happened is the U.S. naval forces off Iran have just been reported now, day before yesterday, shooting down an Iranian drone that was near the USS Abraham Lincoln. So they've shot that down with an F-35 plane. As I say, now also the U.S. Navy warships are accompanying U.S. Oil tankers through the Straits of Hormuz. And just yesterday, there was a major military encounter between our U.S. warships and a number of Iranian gunboats that came out to tried to stop the U.S. oil tanker going through the Straits of Hormuz, and our U.S. warships moved in and protected the ship. All of this is going on as the START treaty this week has gone down to the wire, and now the START treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty that has existed for decades with the United States and Russia, has now expired. And President Trump has refused to renew it. Russian President Putin has offered to renew the treaty. Trump himself has refused to renew the treaty. He's demanding that China be joined in the nuclear weapons reduction treaty, or else he's not going to sign it. This is, of course, highlighting the report that we gave last week that the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have now upped the doomsday clock, portending potential massive thermonuclear war on our planet to 85 seconds before midnight. In light of all of these activities going on, what's happened is Russia has launched new strikes against the facilities in the Ukraine, knocking out all of their power, electric power, including an attack on the nuclear power station in the Ukraine, threatening to blow that up to demand that the Ukraine government cede all of the land of the Donbas to Russia in this major aggressive war that's engaged in right now by Russia against the Ukraine. All of this is going on as President Trump jokes about potentially canceling the midterm elections that are scheduled for November, arguing that with all of the millions of Americans marching in the streets and protesting against ICE and blocking the ICE efforts to take out all the undocumented aliens in the United States, he is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act that's never been invoked yet in our country's history to cancel the elections. And in that context, he's now ordered federal forces to go into Georgia and to seize all of their 2020 election results and all the records, threatening to prosecute anybody that he can get the Justice Department to prosecute now for stealing the 2020 election from him. This is an extraordinarily unstable situation. There's also this week's major news that there's two massive storms that are closing in on the United States, one coming from a massive Arctic blast coming down from the north out of the Arctic into the United States, all the way down into the central states, and another major storm coming out of the Pacific, coming in across Baja, across all of the southern states, now threatening massive storms and hurricane level winds. And at the same time, there's a marked increase in UFO appearances over the Middle East and over the Ukraine. They've now got reports of U.S. Air Force a drone Reaper engaged in surveillance, revealing multiple UFOs in the airspace over the Middle East and also over the airspace over Jordan and Syria. Also, there's reports of an increased number of UFO sightings being reported in the media now here inside the United States. And there's still no official executive branch acknowledgement that UFOs are real in the sense that they represent any type of non-human extraterrestrial life. And also on February 7th, there are major sightings over Sonoma, California, of a large silent black triangle that was videotaped. And there are now more and more reports coming out. People are coming forward, whistleblowers are coming forward, reporting numbers of direct contacts with UFOs. Our New Paradigm Institute is now digitizing the transcripts of over 200 sessions of regressions of hypnotherapy undertaken by Barbara Lamb. She has provided her life's work of recorded interviews with her clients to us. We are redacting the names of the people who were interviewed, and we're now scanning those for the hundreds of accounts of the UFO occupants, non-human occupants, in face-to-face encounters with American citizens, telling them telepathically that we have to get rid of the thermonuclear weapons. This is a threat to our entire civilization and our planet, and also demanding that we stop global climate change from polluting our planet with chemicals that are altering the ecological system and the weather systems of our planet. The reality is vastly more people know what the final score was of the Super Bowl, 29-13, than they know about the encounters, the military encounters that are going on now off Iran with our aircraft carriers in battle groups. And they're not making the connection between two of the largest storms in American history now descending upon the United States and connecting it in any way to global climate change. We are now being able to digitize and start making public more and more of these direct contacts between American citizens and the occupants of the UFOs that are verified to be non-human, warning us to get rid of our thermonuclear weapons and to stop polluting our planet, because the thermonuclear weapons, if detonated, can destroy the genetic material, all life on our planet. People are wondering, what is this connection between this huge increase in the number of UFO sightings, the information being given to people by the UFO occupants that we need to get rid of our nuclear weapons, and the events that are going on in the world? Why are we talking about the UFO issue in the midst of all of this other news? What is it that I can say here to make clear to people the relationship between the UFO sightings and the UFO engagements with people on the ground on our planet and this threat of thermonuclear war and the massive increase in storms and the degradation of our climate through its contamination with chemicals and the burning of fossil fuels on our planet, contrary to the warnings that the ET people have been providing. What we're really seeing here is a dramatic increase in the kind of dialectical, bipolar confrontation dynamic that's going on among the members of our human family. Not only do we have tens of millions of people watching a major sport where the two red team and the blue team, engage in a fight on the battlefield in this dialectical contest. And at the same time, we see the dialectical confrontation going on between the United States and Iran, between the United States and Ukraine on the one side against Russia right now, the threats of nuclear war being raised by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, of a direct nuclear war between either Russia and the United States or China and the United States. What we're witnessing here and experiencing here is a dramatic increase in the instincts on the part of our human species to engage in dialectical confrontation, to divide ourselves into camps and to confront each other in threats over territory, over access to resources, over dominance, over the resources of our planet. This is what we're witnessing here. And at the same time, we're witnessing the potential destruction of our biological systems on our planet through the contamination of our planet by expelling chemicals into our atmosphere as a product of our transportation and energy generating systems. Okay, so what has this got to do with the UFOs? The UFOs are not only warning us against this happening, but they're trying to overcome this tendency that our human family has to confront each other, to divide ourselves into these different two teams and fight each other, and utilizing thermonuclear weapons. The Catholic Church, back in November of 2009, had issued this official statement through the director of the Pontifical Observatory in Rome, Father Jose Gabriel Funes, when he was directed by Pope Benedict. The statement that was made by the Catholic Church is that now, in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, it's now become clear that much sooner than we had previously anticipated, our human family is going to be discovering life elsewhere in the universe. And so therefore, the time has arrived for the commencement of a very important conversation among the laity of our planet about the philosophical and theological questions that are posed to our human family by the discovery of life elsewhere in the universe. This discussion that I'm wanting us to have, pursuant to this admonition, is directed toward these philosophical and theological questions that are posed to us now that we realize through the testimony of more and more of these government experts that the UFO phenomenon is real, and that they virtually certainly represent an extraterrestrial civilization, a non-human civilization surrounding us. And so the question that I want to be addressing today is one of the fundamental bases for the philosophical questions that we have to address. Okay? Now, the underpinnings of a philosophy in our human culture has been reported by and is taught by Harvard University. The Comparative Social Ethics Department at Harvard teaches you that the reason that people adopt different worldviews is because, and different philosophies that are derivative of their worldviews, is because they have different opinions and have come to different conclusions about four basic, fundamental, underlying pillar questions that confront our human family. Number one is the origins of our physical universe. How did our physical universe come into material being? Has it always existed? Did it come into existence at one particular point in history? How did this all happen? The second question is, they call it the teleological question, and that is, we're observing the fact that our whole universe is expanding, moving out and away into a more and more expansive volume in our universe. And we're also aware of the fact that each of the fundamental elements, these 118 elements that we talked about last week, are disintegrating pursuant to their rate of atomic breakdown. Okay? And so this expansion and disintegration of our material in our universe is going on in front of us. The teleological question that confronts us is, will this simply continue? Will our universe simply continue to expand and disintegrate into ultimate nothingness? Or might it actually, at a point at which the impetus for expansion that was generated by the original Big Bang actually expire at some point, while the individual units of matter in the universe are still attracted to each other, so they will begin to collapse back in upon each other to actually condense back into forming elements and mixtures in planets and star systems and galaxies, and then collapse back down into a point where every ultimately irreducible integer of matter in the universe is in basically physical contact with every other one, reduced to the size of the head of a pin, and then the polarity reverse again, and this Big Bang occurs again, so that we have what is referred to as the theory of the oscillating cosmos, that the teleological dynamic that our galaxy and our universe is following is the expansion and contraction that may be going on forever. Okay? This is the teleological question. The third of the profound underlying pillar questions is the ontological question of how consciousness actually comes into being. How does living consciousness come into activity in being out of this material universe? And fourthly and finally, the epistemological question, and that is, what are the means that we have as a human species to actually discern the answers to these profound questions? What I want to raise today is the fact that one of the worldviews, one of the entire octave or spectrum of different worldviews that our human family has settled upon over time is this dialectical worldview, in which that they come to hold the belief that the teleological dynamic of our entire universe is this expansion and contraction between a state of absolute mass and absolute energy, and that's the height of any discernment of ultimate reality that our human family is capable of making. And therefore, they believe that the only logical way that a human being can discern what is right or wrong for him or her to engage in, what conduct, is to become part of a dialectic, that you can develop your own thesis, an operating thesis about reality, but others will develop an antithesis. This thesis and the antithesis have to clash together and confront each other and generate some sort of a synthesis of the two, thesis and antithesis. And then this new synthesis becomes its own operating thesis, which will give rise to another antithesis. And that this is all that keeps happening, and is that we ultimately are unable to really come to any absolute knowledge about the nature of absolute reality. All we have is this dialectical dynamic by means of which we can engage in this kind of dialectical confrontation between thesis and antithesis. What I'm saying here is that this dynamic that we see happening at the present time on our planet, where we all extol the dividing of our human family into a red team and blue team and engaging in this direct confrontation and conflict, is part of what the Super Bowl represents. Is the ultimate manifestation of this kind of dialectical confrontation between these two opposing forces. We see the same thing playing out in our confrontation against Russia, the same thing in our confrontation with the United States and China. And on a larger scale, it's really this fundamental dialectic going on between the capitalist world and the socialist or communist world, that there is this ultimate division now operational on our planet, between these two fundamental struggling theories, economic theories, on our planet. This is the basic underlying dynamic, dialectical dynamic that is going on right now, and which poses this extraordinary danger of arming the two sides to this dialectic with thermonuclear weapons. Each of them threatens to deploy the nuclear weapons and to launch them against the ultimate other, in order to meet its objectives in the geopolitical realm. The UFO beings are warning against this. They're warning against this kind of dialectical dynamic, hoping that we can transcend this and survive this period of having access to thermonuclear weapons, and trying to get us to set aside the nuclear weapons, so that this inclination toward the dialectic doesn't lead to our self-destruction as a species. I've hypothesized, at least earlier in other episodes, that this may be because the extraterrestrial beings are coming and going from our planet, and one of the things that they're engaged in is gathering flora and fauna and genetic material on our planet, including human genetic material, that they may be using to help seed life elsewhere in the universe, on planets that are able to sustain life, even if they haven't been able to yet generate life like our planet Earth does. The beings that are coming and going to and from our planet in these UFOs actually represent, as I've pointed out in earlier podcasts, could be from 6 to 8 billion years older and more advanced than our human species here on our planet. And so therefore they may have had from 6 to 8 billion years more to delve into these profound questions that we view as philosophical questions. They may well have definitive answers to these questions about the teleological dynamic that our universe is engaged in, to really know whether or not our universe is going to ultimately dissipate into nothingness, or whether it in fact oscillates back and forth between the state of absolute mass and absolute energy. We can delude ourselves as a species, as we appear to be doing, into believing that there's no way to ultimately determine what truth is. And so therefore, we have to engage in this kind of constant dialectic, which once it's armed with thermonuclear weapons, threatens to destroy both parties to the dialectic. Okay? So this is something that is so important, because the UFO beings may well know the answer to this. And that because of that, they have been able to overcome a period that they went through in their biological evolution, in their star system, where they were inclined to have this same kind of limited dialectical view of reality. The question might arise as to why don't they share this with us? Why don't they explain to us that there is an ultimate reality that they have access to that could cause us to set aside this dialectical dynamic by means of which we explore to try to determine what truth is. One of the major objectives that we have as proponents of full disclosure is to try to get disclosed what it is that these UFO beings are communicating to us, to find out whether there's any kind of an opportunity here to get access to the information that they have that may be revealing to us that this dialectic is a fool's errand, and it may be predicated upon a completely limited and erroneous theory of reality itself. This is Dan Sheehan. I am the President and General Counsel of the New Paradigm Institute. I'm inviting you to please contact us at newparadigminstitute.org. Sign up and become a member of the New Paradigm Institute. Very importantly, to have you become a member of our Citizens for Disclosure. This is the New Paradigm Institute coming to you, SpectraVision Radio.
To join the citizen movement for disclosure, visit newparadigminstitute.org/take action.